Hey, Stoney here with another game of Mechabellum. This is from the midweek mini tournament Americas, and my opponent is JimmyJeebs. In this game, I'll be playing a marksman specialist, starting with crawlers, phoenix, and of course the level 3 marksman. My opponent will be going with aerial specialist, starting with sledgehammers and fans. I like to pick this unit composition because I've played against it plenty of times and I always find it to be one of the more difficult ones to play against. When you're playing against crawlers, phoenixes, and a level 3 marksman, you have to really worry about many things, right? So there is the chaff, so you obviously need anti-chaff of some sort, but then there's the air, and air is the difficult part. What are you going to do with air? If you use marksman, then you probably won't have enough chaff clear. If you go with fangs, you probably still don't have enough chaff clear. So turn 1 is always, it's almost always a bit problematic when playing against this composition. I dropped 2 arc lights, knowing that I don't have any chaff clear myself, and as long as I can take care of the fangs, the rest of my units should be able to win me the round. And as expected, once the fans are gone, then these Phoenix and the Orange Man are just picking off tanks one by one. In one of my previous videos, we talked about the positioning of crawlers in relation to one of the carry units. So essentially what the plan was, so earlier I think we talked about sledgehammers. We want to put crawlers about 4 squares behind the sledgehammers so that by the time the sledgehammer reaches around this area, when they start firing into the opponent, the crawler will go ahead of the sledgehammers. That was under the assumption that enemy units would normally start firing at around similar area, maybe like around this position. In this case, I followed a similar rule. So instead of 4 squares, I think this is only 3 squares. But you can count them as 4 squares because these crawlers are not directly behind arc lights, which means it will take just a little longer for these crawlers to draw aggro from the tanks, which are currently directly on the opposing side of the arc light. And as you saw in the first round, it does work. So let's go to the second round. The first thing to notice is the unit cards. So first, let's take a look at board. My board will benefit quite well from... Actually, a lot of these cards are quite interesting. Smart Arc Light allows me to go carry arc if I need to. Right now, it's just sledgehammers, so it might be a possibility if he doesn't get a lot of experience on the sledgehammers. Subsidized marksman works too, because I already have a marksman and I can continue to build on that. Wasp is interesting because he is going aggro, so there is no defense on the back line, and he will be very reluctant to put on any defense in the back line. And I think out of all the cards, improved steel balls is probably not the card for me. Wasp is the best one. On the opponent's board, he can do many things. I think right now he is lacking damage, so I wouldn't be surprised if he chose the subsidized marksman. All right, so I picked the wasps and my opponent picked subsidized marksman. Yep, so it made perfect sense. These are very logical decisions based on the conditions of the board. Marksman also answers the problem of Phoenix, and because I don't have any medium units, once my chaff is gone, then these marksmen will be able to pop my singular units. I got the Wasp Swarm, but I didn't want to use it just yet. I know he's expecting it, so I was hoping, you know, maybe he put like a set of maybe a fan, or I don't know, maybe some missiles. I wanted to actually delay the use of Wasp Swarm I know in, the rule of the game is whenever you get an active card, you always want to use it on the very first turn, so that way you have to wait 1 turn less for the cooldown. But for me, so the idea behind this Phoenix jump drive move is that I want to provoke an overreaction on the corners so that I can put my Wasp Swamp right there in the middle in the following turn. Jump drive is 50 resources. It's just the cost of a cheap missile, so it's almost like a poor man's missile. And I think the rule of thumb is if you notice your opponent has Phoenix, especially if they're starting with Phoenix, and if they run jump drive, always expect them to use it. At the very least, that's the case with me. If I have Phoenix, I always use jump drive, because if this flank doesn't work, sure, you lose some Phoenix, you lose 50 resources, but if it does work, you'll win you the round. So unfortunately for my opponent, the flank did work, and hopefully he will respond to the corners, and I'm hoping he'll over-respond to the corners. All right, first let's look at the cards. Let's talk about which ones is good. For me, I think Shield Drop is very interesting. Right now, the opponent's board does not have damage. It has a lot of tankiness, but it does not have damage. So Shield Drop makes a lot of sense for me. And also, I've used the Shield Bubble the previous turn, and it worked really well. For my opponent, he chose Tech Specialist. Makes sense. Right now, nothing is tech, so if he ever wants to tech anything, then he will be saving 50 resources per technology. He did respond the flanks with 2 sets of fangs. I was really hoping for something a bit more aggressive, but I guess fangs will do. I moved my Phoenix out of the way, anticipating the response, but I also wanted to draw these units over. The options for my opponents were either fans or Mustangs. Whatever it is, they will not do too well against the crawlers. So I swapped the Phoenixes out, I put the crawlers back. I'm still maintaining this aggro position, so the units will start coming into the side, and I'm hoping the units will walk in far enough for my Wasp to sneak in and take tower. On the front line here, I just continue to add more chaff and preparing for the next unit drop. Okay, so as expected, some units were drawn to the side, but unfortunately the fans did split in the middle, so allowing some of them to kill my Wasp. Didn't take the tower with Wasp. Unfortunately, the crawlers are doing pretty good, pretty well against the fans, and they will take both of the towers. And the shield bubble was paying it off as well, because as you can see, it got it down to about a third and no further. That brings us to round 4, and round 4 is a big unit drop. All right, so first let's look at my side of the board. I am strong with single unit damage. However, I do have some issues clearing out these tanks fast enough. My chaff clear is decent with these 2 arc lights, and also I have a bit more or a higher quality chaff than he does. He doesn't really have a lot of chaff clear. So for me, I think what makes the most sense is probably Scorpions or Sabertooth. And between the two, I'll probably take Scorpion. Level 5 Sabertooth is a bit overkill for these level 1 tanks. So, and also they don't have the splash, right? And I don't need even more single target damage. I think I'm covered on the single target damage. So I took the Scorpions. For my opponent, he needs chaff clear. Right now, the chaff clear is only coming from these tanks and partially from these fans, but they're also serving as chaff themselves. So he needs something that does a bit better chaff clear. He can go with the Typhoon, but then the Typhoon will run into my strong single unit board. So I wouldn't recommend going to Typhoon just yet. Mustang is probably his best choice. So on my side, I took the Scorpions. I added even more Scorpions. They are quite tanky as well, so I'm hoping that once the smoke clears for the chaff, these Scorpions will be able to go in and essentially wreck everything else. I have the resource to get range, so I got it. Ranged Scorpions are doubly effective, especially on my opponent's side. Nobody has range, so these Scorpions will just be sitting here shooting at everything and waiting for things to come in. My opponent's units are very slow, which means the Scorpions will be able to get at least 1, if not 2 extra shots off before the opponent's units engage with my Scorpions. And not to mention that after my chaff is cleared, my anti-chaff would now become useless. So these Mustangs would just walk forward and serve as mini tanks for these sledgehammers while the Scorpions continue to pound at the rest of his board. The Mustangs are a little scary, but right now they're untapped. They have no range, so I'm not too worried about that. Interesting play with the Wasps on the corners. I was really hoping for the Mustang to be in the corners, but I guess it is interesting. It is introducing another layer of problems for me as well, because I do not have a lot of things that can kill a lot of air units. So I only have these 2 sets of Phoenixes. I sold my Marksman because I realized I just have too much single target damage in favor of getting range on these Scorpions. So these Wasps could prove to be problematic in the future. Okay, so my flank is still getting some value, right? They're tying down these Wasps, they're tying down these fans. My front line is absolutely demolishing his front line, especially once the chaff clears. These level 2 crawlers are going to do so much tanking, while the Scorpions just goes in and clear out everything. The Wasps are problematic, but I do have fans and they are currently in the bubble. And this one is going to go behind the Scorpions, so these Wasps are going to be focusing on the Scorpions while these fans are taking down the Wasps. Is this enough to seal the game? Maybe not yet, so 1 more turn. Alright, so this is it could be a final turn for my opponent, so he really needs to turn it around. He decided to choose the mobilized battleship, which is a good option. So his goal is to drop the battleship somewhere to take tower. I chose Vulcan because I noticed right there in the center, in the belly of the beast, is very soft. There's nothing here. I mean, this marksman might turn around and shoot, but aside from that, it's just Mustangs, fans, and crawlers. So if I drop a Vulcan right here and pull as many things as I can, hopefully I'll kill a bunch of these squads. He added in Stormcallers, a wise choice, because the last turn he still wasn't able to break these shield bubbles. So it's just not enough damage, or not doing enough damage quickly enough to get through my carry units. With these Stormcallers, I'm hoping he will be able to clear my chaff a little bit better, allowing the rest of his army to advance forward and hopefully pop the bubble and do some damage on the army. The Overlord positioning, this is good because it was a mistake on my part. I knew it was going to be one of those things, but at the same time I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm not too worried about it. I have, I have full health, so even if I died, you've just wasted some money to keep yourself alive. And on the other hand, I'm fairly confident with my amount of damage because I have range. That will just continue to dealing damage during the debuff. I bought myself a set of fans, got them with range, because I noticed that my initial chaff clear was a bit slow, and all he had were these fans. So the Mustangs would be a great option to just run forward, kill all these chaff while the crawlers run through the Mustangs and provide the tanking necessary. All right, so let's see how this plays out. I sold one of my Phoenixes. Now looking at it, it's probably a mistake, but I'm hoping this one Phoenix is enough to just get this battle cruiser down. I'll move this Phoenix on the side as well because I was hoping some sort of flanking. Put a missile here. Okay. Oh, I didn't notice. He actually sold a squad of his Mustangs to buy more Stormcrawlers. Okay. Very interesting. This Overlord is stuck on a bunch of fangs. It's getting shot at by my Mustangs. The rest of the Mustangs went forward, clear out the chaff, clear on the way for my Scorpions to shoot at the sledgehammer line. This Vulcan killed everything in the back line, killed the Mustangs. He's probably not going to kill these fans. Oh, wait, yeah, it did. So that was a excellent investment. And with the front line falling, this is GG. Even though I only had a few Mustangs, but with the amount of fans even just following up, they should be enough to clear out these wasps. Okay, so that is GG. Let's take a look at the board and let's see how we can improve on this. Alright, so I've talked a lot about my board. So let's talk about my opponent's board. I think starting from turn 3, there is a problem on my opponent's side, is that there's not enough consistent damage at the front. And we know this because my shield bubbles were unbroken for like 2 or 3 turns. My opponent was very busy dealing with the flanks, but those weren't real flanks. Those were just something to pull their unit away. I think the Wasp was interesting. I think the Wasp could be invested a bit more if he chose to. They do decent damage, and they can help with breaking things up at the front. Because I didn't have any anti-air, I didn't have any response to it until really the last turn. The Stormcrawlers were a great addition. I think instead of going with these Mustangs for that round, so he went for Mustangs and he went for Wasps. I would say that if he chose just one of the two, because they kind of serve in a similar role, or at least he was using them in a similar role as chaff clear on the corners. If you just chose one of the two and used the extra resources to buy Stormcrawlers on that round, he will be able to break into my position a lot faster. Now imagine if you just had Mustangs, maybe right here, right? Assuming he's going to get ranged Mustang, just put it right here. My crawlers, these level 2 crawlers are probably going to be a little bit more, a little harder to kill, but these ones, they're just going to walk in. While the rest of the army is engaging at the front with the Stormcrawlers. And I think that's really going to change how this thing plays out. Another way to do it is just completely forget about the flanks, right? See what I'm doing. Either drop missiles or get a set of level 2 crawlers with impact drill. And just take over this side and take over this side until I respawn. And put the Mustangs with your front line. So I think that's the primary reason. I think his chaff was good, right? He had enough chaff. He was dealing the flanks, even though I don't think it was the most efficient way, right? These are 300 cost units dealing with a couple sets of crawlers. Really, the big problem is the lack of damage. And once he goes Stormcrawlers, there's always a possibility of going Giant as well if he needs to. So either a probably ranged forts up here to deal with my ranged Scorpions. But for now, I think Stormcrawlers is an excellent choice. One other thing you'll notice is most of my units fire in a line, just like his. So Stormcrawlers will be a good choice for me too if I needed even more damage. But that's not what I needed. I needed chaff clear so that my damage dealers can get to his line. So overall, great game. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you on the next one.